Greetings, music lovers, thrill seekers, and conversationalists all across this great fruited plain. You are tuned in to Rush Hour, the daily audio news extravaganza, coming to you live from the Excellence in Podcasting Network's palatial broadcast studios. I want to talk to you today about baseball. Specifically, I want to talk to you about grown men, professional athletes, being told by their employer, Major League Baseball, that they cannot put a Bible verse on their eye black during Pride Night. Now, folks, I know. You heard me say baseball and you thought, Rick, what are you doing? We've got wars and elections and the Senate doing Senate things, and we're going to get to all of it, I promise you. But I want to start here because this right here, this is the canary in the coal mine. This is the thing that tells you everything about where we are as a country. A player, a man, wants to write a scripture reference on his face during a baseball game, a reference to his faith, his personal, deeply held religious faith. And Major League Baseball sends down word, you might want to reconsider that. You might want to reconsider displaying your Christianity during Pride Night at a baseball game. J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, God bless him, put it as simply and as perfectly as it can be put. He said, Trump won. We don't have to do this anymore. I love that. I love that man. That is 5 words that contain more truth than anything the drive-by media has produced in the last decade. And yet, here we are. MLB is still playing hall monitor for the feelings of the most aggressively thin-skinned coalition of activists ever assembled in human history, while simultaneously treating Christian ball players like they need to check their Bibles at the clubhouse door. We are going to get into that. We are going to get into the Senate trying again to clip the president's wings on Iran. We're going to talk about what's happening in Georgia. And I have some thoughts, my friends, on Canada. Canada and what happens when the government runs your health care and runs out of ideas. The answer will chill you. I'm Rick LeBow, this is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. All right, folks, let's do this. Jon Ossoff, Georgia's Democrat senator, first-term lawmaker, a man who has made protecting mothers the centerpiece of his re-election campaign. Jon Ossoff voted against a measure that would have blocked men from receiving maternity care under Medicaid. I'll say that again, slower, for those of you who are driving and thought you maybe heard that wrong. Jon Ossoff voted against blocking men from receiving maternity care. Men. Maternity care. Now, Jon Ossoff is out there every single week talking about protecting mothers, protecting women in labor and delivery, ensuring women have the health care they deserve. That is his whole thing going into this race. That is the bumper sticker. And yet, when someone put forward a very simple, very common sense provision that said, hey, let's make sure maternity benefits are going to people who can actually have babies, Ossoff said no. He said no. My friends, I want to be charitable here. I always try to be charitable. Maybe Jon Ossoff is simply confused about biology. It happens. The Democrat Party has been deeply confused about biology for going on a decade now. So it's an occupational hazard. Or, and I know this is a crazy thought, Maybe John Ossoff knows exactly what he's doing, knows exactly who he's catering to, and has made the calculation that the activist base he needs to keep happy is more important than the women he claims to be championing. You pick which one's more insulting to your intelligence. Now, here's the part that I find just deliciously, endlessly entertaining. The man is running a campaign that is almost entirely built on health care for women. He's talking about labor and delivery services. He is talking about making sure mothers get what they need. And he won't vote to define maternity care as something that goes to, mothers. Democrats prefer symbolism over substance. I have been saying this for years. This is a gift-wrapped illustration of the principle. They will talk about protecting women all day long. They will give you the speech. They will give you the social media post. They will give you the campaign ad with the soft lighting and the acoustic guitar. And then when it comes time to actually put something on paper that protects women in any concrete, biological, common sense way, they fold. They fold because the ideology won't allow it. And Ossoff is going to stand in front of Georgia voters this fall, and he's going to talk about protecting mothers. He's going to say it with a straight face, and the drive-by media is going to let him. Now, while we're in Georgia, let's talk about what happened at the polls Tuesday, because it is genuinely interesting, and there are a few lessons here. Trump-backed candidates went 3 for 3 in terms of being on the ballot in the Deep South primaries, Alabama and Georgia. He got 2 of his guys across the finish line. Mike Collins wins the Georgia Senate runoff, which is outstanding news, and the Alabama race went Trump's way as well. Good nights. But then there's the Georgia governor's race. Billionaire Rick Jackson, a man who, as far as I can tell, decided one day that he wanted to be governor and had the money to make that a real conversation. Rick Jackson beat Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and Burt Jones was the Trump-endorsed candidate. Now, look, I'm not here to cry about this. The people of Georgia spoke. That's how it works. That is literally how it's supposed to work. And maybe Rick Jackson will be a fine governor. We'll see. But what this does tell you is something I think is worth sitting with for a second. Money is extraordinary in politics, always has been. But there used to be a ceiling on what a checkbook could do when it was running against a known, established political figure with presidential backing. That ceiling seems to be getting higher, and I don't know exactly what that means for the long run, but it's worth noting. What it does not mean is that Trump's endorsement is broken or that his influence is fading. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And the Senate seat in Georgia, Mike Collins winning that is potentially a very big deal heading into the midterms. John Ossoff is going to have to run statewide in Georgia while explaining why he doesn't think maternity care should go to mothers. Good luck with that. Now, let's get to the Iran situation, because this one requires some patience, but I promise you, it's worth it. The Senate, and this is becoming almost a weekly ritual at this point, like a bad habit they can't kick. The Senate once again tried to pass a war powers resolution that would have yanked President Trump's authority to conduct military operations against Iran, and once again it failed. By 1 vote. 1 vote. Now, I want to give the Democrats their due here. I really do. They are nothing if not persistent. They are like, when you're trying to get something done in the house, and there's that one drawer that keeps sliding open. No matter how many times you push it closed, it slides back open. That's the Democrats on this Iran war powers thing. Every single week, sliding back open. Here's what I want you to understand about what they're actually arguing. They are saying, and some Republicans join them, let's be honest, they are saying that the President of the United States should have to get permission from the United States Congress before he can respond militarily to Iran, the country that has been the world's single largest state sponsor of terrorism for going on 50 years. The country that has been trying to build a nuclear weapon since before some of these senators were in office. The country that has American blood on its hands going back to 1979. That country. They want Trump to raise his hand and ask Congress for a hall pass before he can act. And look, I understand the constitutional argument. Congress has the power to declare war. We all know this, and the War Powers Resolution has been a source of conflict between the executive and legislative branches since Nixon. This is not new. Presidents of both parties have played fast and loose with it, and presidents of both parties have been called out for it. But here's what I notice. Here's what I always notice. When Barack Obama was bombing 7 different countries simultaneously, I counted, folks. When Barry was running drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia and a few other places that we weren't even fully briefed on, the drive-by media was not exactly lighting their hair on fire about war powers resolutions. The Senate was not staging weekly votes to rein in the commander-in-chief. Funny how that works. Funny how the constitutional concern about executive war-making authority suddenly becomes urgent and pressing and a crisis of democracy the moment the man in the Oval Office has an R after his name. Now, Trump's position on the Iran deal is, and this is something I find interesting from a political standpoint, he's simultaneously keeping the pressure on and signaling he wants out. He says he won't hesitate to drop bombs on Iran's head if they backslide. But he's also floating a peace framework. That is a tightrope. It's a long tightrope, and the drop on either side is significant. The Iran situation is not resolved. The mullahs are not our friends. They were not our friends before the war. They are not our friends now, and a piece of paper is not going to make them our friends. What it can do, if it's done correctly, if the verification is real and the teeth are real, is buy time and reshape the equation in ways that serve our interests. Whether this deal does that, we don't know yet. But I'll tell you this, the people most upset about the possibility of a deal with Iran are the same people who were perfectly happy with the JCPOA, which was essentially a permission slip with an expiration date. They don't actually want a deal. They want the issue. There's a difference. All right, the roundup. Let's move. First up, Act Blue, the Democrat fundraising machine, huge fundraising machine. Billions of dollars flowing through this operation every election cycle. Congress has been asking Act Blue some questions about foreign money, specifically whether foreign actors have been funneling donations through Act Blue using straw donors, American names, foreign money. And Act Blue's response to Congress's questions? Silence. They're not answering. They are stonewalling Congress. Now, my friends, let me ask you something. If the NRA, if a conservative fundraising operation was suspected of taking foreign money and was refusing to cooperate with a congressional inquiry, what would the front pages look like? What would the primetime anchors' opening monologues look like? I think we all know. It would be the only story on the air for 6 weeks minimum. Act Blue, crickets. The drive-by media is not exactly camped out on this story. And this matters. This matters. Foreign money in American elections is supposed to be illegal. It is supposed to be one of those bright lines that everyone agrees on, left and right. Either we care about that principle or we don't. And right now, the behavior of Act Blue and the silence of the press suggests that for certain people, certain institutions, the principle is negotiable. Don't let this one go. This is the kind of story that deserves a lot more daylight than it's getting. Next, Canada. Oh, Canada. There is a story out there about Canada's assisted suicide program. They call it Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID, which is a very pleasant clinical name for a very dark thing. And what's happening up there is that as their single-payer healthcare system struggles to keep up with demand, as wait times stretch out, as options narrow, more and more Canadians are choosing euthanasia. And the detail that should make every American stop and think, some of the people opting for assisted suicide are not choosing it because they have a terminal illness and are at the end of a long, painful road. They are choosing it because they cannot get the care they need, because the system has failed them and they have run out of options. That is not compassionate health care. That is a government-run healthcare system offering death as a cost-saving measure. I have been saying for decades, that when you let the government run your healthcare, the government eventually starts making decisions about whose healthcare is worth paying for. Liberals always called that a scare tactic. They called it fear-mongering. They said that was the kind of thing crazy right-wingers said to frighten people away from sensible universal coverage. Canada. Look at Canada. That is the end of the road. That is what Medicare for All looks like when it runs out of money and runs out of ideas. And by the way, speaking of people who have made promises about universal health care that they cannot keep, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, the man who wants to be your next Democrat president, or at least wants you to think about the possibility that he might want you to think that. Gavin Newsom promised California single-payer health care when he was running for governor. Multiple times, emphatically, he was going to get it done. It never happened. And now, as he positions himself for the White House, he is quietly, carefully, thoroughly memory-holing that promise. It doesn't come up. He doesn't mention it. If you bring it up, the people around him change the subject, because the reality of single payer is Canada, and Canada is not a good campaign slogan. Last item for the roundup, and this one brings us full circle. We started the show here, so let's come back around and finish the thought. The MLB, Pride Night, Bible verses. A player wanted to write a Bible verse reference on his eye black during Pride Night. Management warned him off it. J.D. Vance called it out. Other Republicans called it out. And the broader point is this. For years, we were told by corporate America and by sports leagues and by all the major institutions that the culture wars were being waged by the right, that conservatives were the ones obsessed with social issues, trying to inject politics into everything, wanting to police what people could and couldn't say or do or believe. And now we have Major League Baseball, America's pastime, the sport of Babe Ruth and Ted Williams and Lou Gehrig, telling a Christian ballplayer that his faith is a little too much for one particular themed evening. You know what? J.D. Vance is right. Trump won. The American people voted, and they voted pretty clearly for a country where you don't have to pretend that Christianity is somehow more offensive than a neon-lit corporate celebration, where a man can put a Bible verse on his face without getting a memo from the front office. The question is whether corporate America and the sports leagues got the memo, because it sure seems like some of them are still operating on 2020 rules. And 2020 was a long time ago, folks. A long time ago. All right, my friends. We're coming to the close of another edition of Rush Hour And before I let you go, I want to leave you with something worth carrying around with you for the rest of the day. We covered a lot of ground today. Georgia primaries, Iran, Canada, John Ossoff explaining why men need maternity care, a full and beautiful menu of American life in the year of our Lord 2026. And here's the through line if you're looking for one. Here's what all of it has in common. The people running our institutions do not trust you. They don't trust you to hear a scripture verse at a baseball game without having a crisis. They don't trust you to have your elections decided by the guy who earns the most votes rather than the one who raises the most money from the right people. They don't trust you to know that single-payer health care failed everywhere it was tried, and they're certainly not going to tell you. They don't trust you to figure out what John Ossoff is actually doing when he votes to let men access maternity benefits. But here's what I know. After all these years behind this golden microphone, sitting in the Attila the Hun chair, reporting for duty, the American people are a lot smarter than the people trying to manage them. Always have been. The gap between what the elite thinks of the public and what the public actually is, that gap is enormous. And that gap is what got Donald Trump elected twice. Don't let them close the loop on you. Keep your eyes open. Keep asking the questions they don't want asked. And for heaven's sake, if a man wants to put a Bible verse on his face at a baseball game, let him. This is still America. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow if they let us back on.